In this episode, we're gonna break down Slack and Asana, and we're gonna figure out which one comes out on top. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tech Audit TV. My name is Brandon Hassler, and in this show, I'm gonna break down Slack and Asana. These are both team communication platforms. They're both very popular, and so I wanted to see which one came out on top and which could be the better solution for you. Let's start with Slack. The main goal of Slack is to replace all of your other communication platforms with just Slack. You may find yourself having a phone call with your boss and then emailing the notes to your team and then texting your assistant to see how that design project is coming along. That all works until you start to scale. The idea is that 100% of your communication happens through Slack. The first thing I noticed about Slack was how smooth it operated. It's nice being able to have a conversation on my MacBook and then keep the conversation going on my phone without any hiccups. Slack also has a desktop app for both Mac and Windows, which is something that really made it stand out to me. Slack is definitely one of those platforms where you have to use the mobile app and the desktop app to really get the full effect. Otherwise, if you rely on the web-based version, odds are you're gonna forget to check and you're gonna miss out on messages, and it really isn't that effective. I consider myself pretty tech savvy, but there was still a slight learning curve when first using Slack. Understanding not only how public and private channels work, but also learning all of the different shortcuts that you can do within Slack. However, after about 5 to 10 minutes of using Slack, it all starts to click and you realize it's the simplicity of the platform that you're not initially used to. Slack is full of channels that you and your team create centered around projects and different topics that your team needs to discuss. Inside each channel is a giant chat room. This format flows really well and is great at having a real-time conversation, but there are the occasions where you really wish it had threaded comments, much like a Facebook group. It's also worth mentioning that the search on Slack is incredible. Many say it rivals the search that Gmail has, and in my own experience, I've had better luck finding old conversations through Slack than I've had through Gmail. Slack has also recently built in the ability to have phone calls with members of your team. Unless you have a paid account, you can only call one person at a time, but with a paid account, you can have conversations with multiple people at once. This is great when you're in a conversation that just requires you to hop on the phone with someone. And then we have Asana. I tried Asana in 2013 and I hated it. It was overly complicated, the design was ugly, it just didn't help with our team communication needs. However, since then, they have completely redesigned the platform from ground up. From the design to the functionality, it's much more beautiful and way easier to use. And it really does make it a serious competitor to Slack. Like Slack, you can manage multiple companies or projects from one account, which is nice. So without ever having to log out, you can chat with your full-time coworkers in one Slack account and then immediately switch over to your GarageBand buddies and talk about your next gig. One of my favorite features about Asana is the ability to create tasks and assign those tasks to different members of your team. And around each task, you can have a conversation, notes, all of that stuff. Asana really is built around task management and conversation second, whereas Slack is completely different. Slack is communication, conversations first, and then everything else kind of falls behind. In fact, Slack doesn't even have a built-in feature to create to-do lists with your team, which is one thing I really wish Slack had. But if a big part of your team communication revolves around tasks and to-do lists, then you definitely want to look into Asana since that is its major strength. Asana is pretty intuitive in terms of how it's laid out. You have an area dedicated to discussions, which operates very similar to a Google Plus community or a Facebook group. You then have an area where there's a team calendar that syncs with all of the different project deadlines. And then you have your projects. Within each project, you create a to-do list. Each item on the to-do list can have additional notes, deadlines, threaded comments, in case team members need to discuss it further. Put simply, the best way to describe Asana is if you took Google Plus Communities and Wunderlist and smash them together into one platform. Asana is available on both iOS and Android, but unlike Slack, it doesn't offer any desktop apps. For me, that's a huge negative, simply because I like desktop notifications to let me know the different activity that's going on within my team, so I don't miss out on any important conversations. This obviously isn't as big of a deal if your team is not sitting around computers all day. If they're contractors, they're out on the go, then the mobile app is going to be plenty for you. So let's talk about price now. Slack is definitely the cheaper option here. You can manage unlimited teams, unlimited amount of users. You can talk all you want, completely free. You really could use Slack for your company the rest of your life and never pay a dime if you don't care about all of the bells and whistles. If you want additional features like group calls, unlimited searchable messages, or even unlimited integrations with just about every major service, it jumps to about $7 a user, which can get pricey if you have a big team. On the flip side, Asana has much simpler pricing. You essentially have unlimited access to all of the features, with some exceptions on Asana, completely free, but it's only up to 15 users. This for me was a big negative because knowing that my team could grow past 15 employees, I would then have to pay, otherwise we couldn't get those on there. Whereas Slack, I could have 300 employees on there. I wouldn't get the bells and whistles, but it still wouldn't be a cost to me. If you do need more than 15 users on Asana, the price jumps to a little over $8 a month per user. So it can get much more expensive than Slack. So which team communication platform comes out on top? For me, I've got to pick Slack, even though a big part of my daily schedule revolves around to-do lists. I've got to go with Slack because it has so many more strengths. Let me explain why. I can grow my team to 100 people on Slack and still never pay a dime, which is really big when you're a small startup. Another reason I really enjoy Slack is because it has a very real-time feel to it. I think that is due to the format centered around chatting and the fact that it has desktop apps, mobile apps, so the conversation is just always going. It feels like you're texting or just in a chat room, very real time, which for me, that makes it much more engaging and it's easier to stay on top of what's going on. I'm not saying that Asana is the wrong platform to use, it just can get really expensive pretty quick, unlike Slack, which you can use for a long time for free. Plus, Slack has a huge community behind it, and Slack has shown signs of constant innovation. So if I had to bet all of my chips on one of these platforms in terms of which one's gonna have a brighter future, it's gonna be Slack, purely because they're constantly innovating, and I haven't seen a lot of changes from Asana recently. So there you have it, Slack versus Asana. Let me know if I missed anything. Also, I really am curious as to what your opinions are in terms of these two platforms, if you have preferences. Let's keep the conversation going down below in the comments, and I will see you guys next time on Tech Audit TV.